Welcome to Cinemike. For this episode, I'm going to review Mother! The new film from Auteur director Darren Aronofsky. I've been a fan of his ever since Requiem for a Dream, and that was a trip. But then, watched The Fountain with Hugh Jackman, and I think that's his most underrated movie. It was a little divisive among critics and audiences, but I personally loved how ambiguous it was and philosophical and didn't give you all the answers to all the questions. Left it for you to figure out. All good stuff. And then Black Swan. I felt like I was having a nervous breakdown along with Natalie Portman while I was watching that movie. So you see certain parallels in these films. You always know when you're watching an Aronofsky movie. And that's what's exciting about him. He's a true artist in that way. We have this movie coming out, and anyone who's been paying attention to the reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, it's in the 70% approval rating range, and then IMDb, among general audiences, it's around the 6 out of 10 range. Aronofsky has a reputation for making movies that people either love or hate, and that continues on here. Some people are very disgusted and disturbed by it. Some people are saying it goes too far. There was actually a screening of it at a film festival where apparently half the audience booed. So again, divisive. But that almost got me more pumped to see it. I was like, what's all this about? This is a really difficult movie to review fresh off of seeing it because you kind of leave the theater shell-shocked. Like, I feel like that guy in Saving Private Ryan who picks up his arm off the beach and is kind of stumbling around confused. It's just a really insane ride. This is something you need to let sit for a little while, but I'm going to do my best. Basically, if you look at the narrative in a literal sense, then the story is about a couple who lives in a house in the middle of nowhere, very isolated, and it belongs to Javier Bardem's character, and it had burned down at one time, and now it's being renovated by Jennifer Lawrence. And while she's doing this, he's trying to recover from writer's block, and he's a poet, and they're trying to build a life together. But then they keep having these strangers that are appearing on their doorstep. Ed Harris being the first, but then he's accompanied by his wife, Michelle Pfeiffer. And then their children show up, and more people show up, and they appear to be fans of Javier Bardem's work. And they just won't leave. And this gathering of people begins to feel like a virus on the house. And Jennifer Lawrence has no control over this, and Javier Bardem just keeps welcoming them and accepting them and forgiving them for their trespasses. And it just spirals out of control, and you just delve deeper and deeper into insanity. I gotta tell you, there's nothing I can say that can prepare you for how strange this movie becomes in the end. There's a lot of parallels with this movie and Aronofsky's previous work. Like The Fountain, it's very ambiguous, philosophical, symbolic, asks a lot of questions that it doesn't give you the answers to, and like Black Swan, it makes you feel like you're going insane. Jennifer Lawrence, she was great. She's initially really passive and is very eager to please Javier Bardem. Her character starts off a little on the weaker side, but I think that is kind of the intent, is that you're building her towards a breaking point, and you feel like you're breaking along with her in the end there. But anyways, you know, I think that the only complaint I have, it's such a petty thing, but when she wakes up, the transition from being asleep to awake, I didn't think she did very well, but that's such a petty thing. Everything else, she was great. She had to juggle a lot of emotions and disturbing scenes, and, you know, she was intense. Good job. Then there's Javier Bardem, who is a mystery, you know, to the audience and to her. We're all trying to figure him out and try to understand why he is embracing and accepting all these strangers into the house over her and, you know, and neglecting her. He's a very unsettling guy, the way he speaks and the way he looks at things, and, you know, you always feel like he's going to go psycho on you. Javier Bardem is such a great actor, but there's a lot of mysterious characters in this that are there, and they're great at their performances. There's something unnatural about them, almost the way that people interact with you in dreams. Like, you have Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer. Good to see her back in movies again. I've always been a fan of hers. They're both great actors, and they bring this really unsettling kind of presence. You're not sure what they want or what they're doing in the house. I feel like Ed Harris's storyline didn't tie enough into the ending to the film. There's a certain point where Ed Harris and his family kind of step out of the narrative, and they don't really step back in. I would have liked that to be tied together a little bit more. And the only other cast member that's worth mentioning is Kristen Wiig. She pops in this movie pretty randomly. In that last part of the film that she appears in, things are so wild and crazy that it's really hard to figure out who she is as a character, but she's always a welcome presence. The cinematography is also fantastic in this movie. You're always in Jennifer Lawrence's perspective. There's this gritty handheld camera work that is always kind of holding on her, and reveals of other characters happen when the camera's kind of working around her head or around her in some way, and we're being exposed to these crazy things through her eyes. And I felt like the camera work really captured that. So, really strong job, but it's Aronofsky. He always has amazing cinematography and visuals. It's so surreal and dreamlike that anything that I could maybe say is a flaw, in the idea that it's a dream, it kind of makes sense. Things were very unnatural. Like, a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the interactions felt so strange, and a lot of the visuals, certainly near the end, very nightmare-like. The movie is great at making you feel on the edge of your seat. You're constantly expecting something to happen. It makes you feel so unsettled and uncomfortable and awkward. I mean, everything that you're not supposed to do in a movie, this movie does. You know, like that line that's supposed to be drawn, like, you don't cross this line. They just stomp all over that line. They go way beyond it. And there are times where things are so insane that you are both horrified, but you're also chuckling and laughing, almost out of hysteria, because things are just so crazy. I mean, I found myself laughing at moments that I knew were not meant to be funny, but it's not like I actually thought they were comedic, it's just that it was so nuts. There were times in this movie that I will say that I hated it. There were certain scenes that I was like, fuck this movie. I really thought that at certain moments. I even thought about leaving in certain moments. But something just kept compelling me to keep watching. As the credits were rolling, I was just sitting there stunned, like, what the hell did I just watch? So what the hell is going on in this movie? Now, none of what I'm going to say is really spoilers because the film never gives you any clear answers. We are left with a lot of questions and a lot of possible explanations. In the short time since this movie's been released, I've already heard a lot of theories. It seems like a lot of people coming out of this has one. That the story is allegorical for the Bible or for the creation of the earth. That certain characters represent God or the devil or Adam and Eve or Jesus. That it's all about a test of faith and how much someone can endure before losing hope. That Jennifer Lawrence herself represents Mother Earth. That it's a symbolic representation of a failing relationship. A woman devoted to a man who will never love her as much as his work or his fans' approval. Darren Aronofsky is like an artist that splashes paint on a canvas and asks the observer to figure out what it means to them. For people that like art that is clearly defined, they're probably going to hate this movie. This is interpretive art. There are many possible answers, but not a definitive one. It all depends on the individual. It's definitely not for everyone, but for analytical types, I do think that it's worth a shot. Just as long as they go into it knowing that it's going to require some work on their part to sit through it. I personally do enjoy movies that challenge you and force you to participate by thinking it through and trying to solve those questions for yourself. That's what I loved about The Fountain. People are going to be talking about this, and, you know, not all of it's going to be positive. Some people are going to hate it. So, love it or hate it. Is it art? Is it junk? That's for you to decide. I feel like if you asked me a week from now, it might be a totally different rating. And I'm only judging it off of the first fresh viewing, and I think it needs to sit for a little bit and digest. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. While the movie is really intriguing and interesting, I respect the movie in a lot of ways, but there are also some flaws in it, like the Ed Harris character's family not really having a payoff in the ending. And it is kind of chaotic and difficult to sit through, so part of me wants to give it a higher rating, but I think I need to find some middle ground. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that this particular film could be for me, I think I would give Mother a 7.5. Wow, this is the most difficult review I have ever done by far. But if you enjoyed this video, then please click like. And also feel free to leave a comment below. With this movie especially, I would love to hear anything that you have to say. Any theories about what the hell's going on, or if you agree or disagree with anything that I said. But also feel free to subscribe to my channel, and also you can now follow me on Twitter at CinemikeNerd. So anyways, until next time, this is Mike, signing off.